Can I thank colleagues for their contributions, and can I particularly welcome the group that has come here together today, Together for Safety. I want to acknowledge the huge work you've done, the advocacy and the energy you've brought to this really important issue. And can I start with what I think is the most important thing to state, which is we are legislating for safe access zones. That is happening. It's in the programme for government, and we're doing it. Whether it is a version of this bill, which would require very, very significant change, and we can go through that, or whether it is a new bill that is brought in on an all-party basis, that's for consideration in the Oireachtas. But we are legislating for this. This is happening. Termination of safety, termination of pregnancy services are legal. They were agreed by an overwhelming majority in a referendum. It is completely unacceptable for any woman to be harassed and intimidated in accessing such services. It is completely unacceptable for any clinician to be harassed or intimidated, or potentially worse, in providing these services. And we are not going to stand for it. Now, there has been a view, and it's been a view that's been expressed to me through legal opinion, it's a view held by An Garda Síochána, that additional powers are not required, that the current powers are sufficient. It is not a view I agree with. It is not a view I have accepted. It is not a view of this House, or I believe the lower house, and we are legislating. Right? So that is happening. These sorts of tactics, this sort of intimidation is not okay. I've spoken with GPs who've been on the receiving end of this, and the receiving end of this where they have their clinics beside their home, through the same gate. Not related to termination of pregnancy services. I've been on the receiving end of it. My children have been on the receiving end of it. I know what it feels like, and I know what it feels like as a parent when your home is targeted. And we will not stand for women in this country being intimidated and being attacked and being abused and being moralised at in accessing healthcare services in this country. So the only question that I am concerned about is, what is the quickest and most robust way to get us there? That's it. That's all I'm interested in. Now, for us to do this, though, we need to be really honest with each other. This is complicated. It was promised years ago. It wasn't legislated for by the previous government, in part because the previous minister was presented with a huge amount of legal opinion that said that this either was unnecessary or was unconstitutional or would have too much of a chilling effect on civil liberties, which we also obviously hold sacred in our country. And it's a very, very delicate balance. And the Gardaí at the time informed the department and informed my predecessor that these powers, this law, this promise was not necessary. It is complex. In response to this bill, I have pages and pages and pages of legal opinion as to why various parts of the bill wouldn't work. And we discussed quite a lot of it actually in second stage. So we just need to be honest that what we're trying to do here is difficult. If it had been straightforward, I believe there would be an act in place right now. It's not easy, right? And it does require some trade-offs. We are pushing up against civil liberties when we do this. And I know we all take that absolutely deadly seriously. So we've got to get it right. So what we need is an act that is legally robust. I think it'll be challenged, right? Or it'll certainly be assessed to see if a constitutional challenge could be taken. Now, the legal advice I have is that the bill before us, as it stands, or even with minor amendments, would not survive a constitutional challenge, right? So we either have to do some very kind of root and branch changes to it, or we can redraft something, and both of those options are there. But it has to be legally constitutionally robust, first and foremost. It has to be effective. So we need to be very clear as to what our policy intent is. So are we talking about safe access zones around maternity units? We are. Are we talking about safe access zones around GP clinics? I believe we are. Are we talking about safe access zones around pharmacies? Not sure we are, but this bill would create that, right? Are we talking about safe access zones around students' unions' offices? I don't think we are, but the legal opinion I have is that the current bill would do a lot of things which actually I don't think any of us particularly want to do. And for example, if you create 100-metre zones in somewhere like Dublin City around, you know, every pharmacy, every GP, the family planning clinic, etc., actually we'd end up in a situation where we couldn't have legitimate protest or demonstration, either for or against aspects of termination of pregnancy, right? So it's not to critique the bill. This is incredibly difficult stuff. It's why we don't currently have an act in place. It's just to say there's a very delicate but legally robust and constitutionally robust balance we have to find. It has to be enforceable, obviously, and it has to be cognizant of civil liberties, something we all as legislators hold to be sacrosanct. And we have very, very significant and important protections of our civil liberties within Bunreacht na hÉireann and in European law. And so we've got to, obviously, any time we're looking to make an exception to those, and this is what we would be doing, we would be carving out an exception. We have to be cognizant that we do that in the appropriate way. So what we need is a bill that fulfills the policy objectives. We need to be very clear on what the policy objectives are. Is it GP clinics? Is it pharmacies? Is it family planning centres? And so forth. What kind of protest or demonstration or freedom of speech within those zones is acceptable? Any? Maybe some, but not others. We need to just be really clear on what we're talking about in terms of the policy objective. And I believe, to the greatest extent possible, it needs to be cross-party, right? So, a question I was asked, I think very directly and very correctly, was what has happened since October, right? A lot of work has gone on. There's been a lot of analysis of this bill. I've been pushing this very hard within the department. And the unit has also been doing assisted human reproduction, which I know you're very interested in as well. So that unit has been pushing that and pushing this. And they have run up against some very serious challenges, legal challenges, for how we all bring this into place. The other thing we have done is we have instigated, obviously, the review of the legislation of termination of pregnancy. Now, I take the point that we're not going to tie the publication of heads of bill or even the passing of this bill to the outcome of the review of the termination of pregnancy. However, we're in the middle of a really comprehensive consultation at the moment with women who are using the services, with clinicians who are providing the services, and with the wider public and civil society. And within the scope of that, and this discussion has been had directly with the chair, within the scope of the the consultation happening now is access to services. So I'm not going to wait for months for a final report on phase one. But what I am doing, in the conversation that's been had with the team and with the chair, is we need to draw in those experiences and those testimonies as well. And I think it's very important that we do this. What we shouldn't do is finalise a bill and then listen to what this big consultation has said and realise actually we've missed things, right? So it's a shorter term thing. It's not to push it out to the end of the year or anything, but we do need to do that as well. So what I've done is, yesterday I wrote to the chair of the Health Committee and we had a chat earlier on today to say, look, what I want to do is I want to bring the officials in health who are immersed in the challenges, in the legal challenges and the opportunities and the different options available to a cross-party group. That can be the Health Committee, so I've written to the Health Committee to ask that within the next 4 weeks, could they free up time, and not just, a 1 or a 2 hour session. This is going to take a bit of time. And if they can't, and they may not, I know the Health Committee is flat out, and I think they were meeting 3 times this week. If they can't, and they're going to consider it and they'll come back to me, I think, very shortly, what we're going to do is convene an all-party group, bring people together, people who are interested in this, have a detailed conversation with officials in health. We have detailed advice from justice. We could potentially bring others in as required, right? And we need to spend a bit of time, I think, on an all-party basis saying, okay, what is it we want to achieve? What are the genuine legal challenges we need to overcome to make sure that this is robust and stacks up, and that it isn't challenged, or if it is challenged, it survives that challenge? And how do we roll this out? So that's what I'm proposing to do. So in terms of today's bill, the government will not be opposing this bill. In fact, there's supporters of this bill right across the House, which is very welcome to see. Right, I won't be opposing any of the amendments. So colleagues have asked why government hasn't tabled amendments. The reason I haven't tabled any amendments is because the officials are still working through exactly how this can work. And we just all need to be honest with each other, right? The advice I have is getting this right is hard. This is hard. If it was easy, previous governments, you know, it'd be an act. It would already be in, right? So rather than me tabling amendments, essentially we need to have this conversation. We need to have it in the coming weeks. Agree on the policies. Be honest with each other and listen to the officials in terms of the legal challenges, the operational challenges, the enforcement challenges. Figure out a way forward, and do one of two things: either then table what will be very significant amendments to the bill, or redraft it. Whichever, from my perspective, it's just about what's the quickest route to getting the right piece of legislation on the statute books. So that's my contribution for now. Thank you, Chair.
For that.